My name is Kevin Hamilton. I'm a 1980 graduate of Clark High School. Went to Northside schools all the way through as a Northside product. Started off at Colonies North Middle School my 2nd through 5th grade years. Our principal at the time was Jim Carson. My PE teachers were Ms. Rogers and Ms. Deckard. I remember them well. Moved on from Colonies North and went to Hobby Middle School my 6th, 7th, and 8th grade years. Jay Dubose was our principal at Hobby during my time there as the mid-70s. Went through a number of coaches there, from Wes Wolfshaw to Terry Hall, Lloyd Alexander, Frank Trevino, Paul Langner. A lot of influence on my life by those coaches. After Hobby, went to Marshall High School for 2 years, and then Clark High School was built, so I moved over to Clark. The first year that Clark opened, the 78-79 school year, was my junior year, and then 1980 I was part of the first graduating Clark at first graduating class at Tom C. Clark High School. Jerry Daniel was our principal at Clark at the time. Being involved in athletics at Clark, my basketball coach was Newton Grimes. My baseball coach was Danny Padron, who I later was fortunate enough to coach with. But after Clark moved on to Texas Lutheran College at the time, they are university now, but I still see them as TLC. After graduation from there, came back to Northside and was hired to teach and coach at Clark by C. Marvin Gustafson, was our athletic director at the time in Northside. Mike Robbins was our head football coach and athletic coordinator, and was hired to teach and coach there. Was there for a total of 24 years, the last 13 as the head boys basketball coach. At that point, I moved to the Northside ISD athletic office as an assistant athletic director. I was brought over there by George Short, who was the athletic director at the time, and then Stan Lang came in, and Stan has been our athletic director since that time. While coaching at Clark, was fortunate enough to work with some great men, some great mentors, coaching peers who I looked up to and learned a lot from and used during my time as a coach and as an athletic administrator. Like I said earlier, Mike Robbins was our head coach and athletic coordinator. What an influence on my life and an influence on my coaching, influenced my coaching philosophies. Danny Padron, who I'd played for, was now coaching with. Lloyd Alexander was our head coach at Clark after Coach Robbins. I worked for Coach Alexander. What a great man. Danny Murphy was our head boys basketball coach during the 11 years that I was the assistant coach there. Learned so much from Coach Murphy. So I had the opportunity to work with great people, great influencers of kids, and was able to see firsthand how you're supposed to be as a coach. Worked with some great principals during my time teaching and coaching at Clark. Started off with Jerry Daniel, moved on to Phyllis Giffen, later Don Schmidt, Larry Martin, Brian Woods, Stan Lang, and throughout a lot of that time, Ken Patronella was our vice principal. Great people and great people to work with and learn from. I'm sometimes asked, how did, and as an interviewer of prospective employees, I sometimes ask, when did you know that you wanted to teach, and when did you know that you wanted to coach? And my answer to that is, my answer that I usually give is I tell the story about when I was in college and we played the University of Houston in a basketball game. This was the early 80s, and for the people that remember, the University of Houston at that time were one of the top teams in the nation year in and year out, and they were known as Phi Slamma Jamma. They were led by Akeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler, who are voted to be two of the top 50 players ever in the history of the NBA. They had 3 other guys in that team who were also future NBA players. After playing against those guys, I thought to myself, because at that point I was wanting to be a professional athlete, and that's all I'd ever wanted to do. And then playing against those guys, I said, you know what, I better have something else to fall back on if I can't be a professional athlete, because I'm not like these guys. So I tell that story. It's partially true. It's a true story, but I really, before that, knew that I wanted to teach and coach. That kind of cemented it, though. But all through my life, I knew if I couldn't play, I wanted to coach. I wanted to be around kids. I wanted to be around sports. I wanted to be around athletics. And I just always knew I wanted to do that. My summer jobs were never going to work at some store or anything like that. I worked at Hobby Middle School Summer Rec. We had a great recreation program during the summers. That was my summer job from probably my 8th grade year on. When I was in college, after my freshman year in college, I came home. There were still 3 or 4 weeks left of the public schools. So back then, you didn't have to have a degree to substitute. So I started substituting in May of my freshman year in college, and then my sophomore year, then my junior year, then after my senior year, I substituted all along. I always wanted to be around kids. I always wanted to be an influencer of kids, so I was able to do that. Doing this interview, I've been asked to tell some stories. Even though I'm a storyteller and I can think of a lot of stories if I'm in the right place at the right time, right now isn't that time. What I can talk about is the relationships that were built as an athlete with teammates. I never forget the last game I played, high school basketball. We lost in the regional semifinals, and it was hard for me to get over that. And it wasn't the losing, it was the fact that I knew I was going to college to play basketball and to go to school. But the hurt from that loss that night was not the loss. It was the fact that I would never play with all my friends again. All those guys were my closest friends. I would never play with them again. And I knew I was going to play again, but it was tough. And then as you move on to college, the same thing happens. It's the relationships that are formed as an athlete, as a player, that those are lifelong friendships. Then as a coach, it's the same type of thing. I've got a million stories, but it all comes back to the relationship and the camaraderie that you have with those other coaches in that coach's office, the things you go through. You are family. People say it's like a family. Well, it is. You are family. And I keep in contact with all the people that I've worked with through the years. Sometimes people ask me, when you got out of coaching and you became an athletic administrator, what'd you miss the most? And the answer today is the same thing as it was 10 years ago when I first got out. You miss the relationship that you have with the other coaches and the camaraderie that you have with those guys in that coach's office. And then the second thing you miss is, as an athletic administrator, you don't have your guys anymore. You don't have your team, your players. We have everybody in the district. But you're not close to them. So you miss that relationship with young people, and those trusts you build with them over the years. When you coach, you're trying to help kids and influence kids. And when you're an athletic administrator, you're trying to help coaches help kids on a whole district level. And you're not for Hobby Middle School or Clark High School anymore. You're for everybody in Northside. That's what makes it so tough when we have district games and we're all playing each other. As a coach, you try to talk to young people about the value in athletics and the value in sport, the value on being on a team. In our position now, we have the ability to talk to coaches about those things that they can talk to their kids about. Some of which, the obvious ones, as everybody knows, what do you get out of athletics? Well, you get life skills. You learn things that you're going to be able to use for the rest of your life. You learn about teamwork. You learn about loyalty. You learn about the value in preparation. One of the fun things as an athlete and as a coach, at least for me, was I loved the preparation. I loved getting ready for that big game, and you prepare, and then you go play the game. Well, that's no different, as we all know, than you got a big test in your algebra class. You study, you go take that test. Well, a high school football game on Friday night, that's the test. That's the test for what those players have been working towards all week. And it's personal, and it's with the team. There's so many things. I can't imagine what I would be like today had I not been involved in athletics growing up. I would be a totally different person. The people that I came in contact with on a daily basis, the coaches that I played for, the coaches that I worked with as a coach, you know, all of those put together made me who I am. Teachers that I had, you know, I think about being at Clark High School. My journalism teacher was Yvonne Gaddicke. To me, she was like a coach, because in journalism, it's not you go to class and then you go to your next class. You have to spend time in there. I wrote for the Clark Chronicle. I was the first sports editor at Clark High School. So you spend a lot of time with that teacher, a lot of times with that group of people, and it's the same as being on a team. So it's not just coaches that had influence on my life, it's teachers as well. If there's any teachers watching this that you had me in class, you had a great influence on me, you impacted my life, you made me want to be who you are, otherwise I wouldn't have been doing this for 34 years. But going back to the teamwork and the kids, and you know, I think we would want our coaches to tell our kids to learn to be a great teammate. You know, be a great teammate, be selfless, help that next person out. Don't just worry about yourself. All of those things, if you can do all of that, that's going to carry you forward in life. I am the husband that I am the father that I am is because of athletics.